So in this video, I'm going to be talking about the time I spent in Cambodia. When I lived here, a year and a half, I lived here. And right now I'm walking along the street of where I used to work. The first workplace that I was in when I was living here. I used to jog along this road, quite often after work for exercise. And I really like this area because it's more of a locals area. It's just outside of the main part of town. But how did I get here? How did I get here? Well, I remember, if I go back to when I was studying at university, I was studying my degree in business, commerce, majoring in financial planning, and I had aspirations, I guess, of getting into that world. Getting into the world of finance and accounting and business. I didn't really know much about that world, to be honest. It was just something, like you get a degree, you go and work in a good company, you're highly skilled, you have your highly skilled education from university, you get a good paying job, you work in a good paying industry, you make a good living. That's what I thought, that's what I thought you do. And that's what I guess most people do. And so I pursued that, and I haven't really spoken about a lot of the things that I'm going to speak about now in this video. I haven't spoken about. I've written about my journey in blogs and stuff, and there is a blog that you can find on worldpackers.com. It's a big travel tech company based out of Sao Paulo, Brazil, and I use them to find work here in Cambodia. But you can find that there, my blog. But I'm going to get into a bit more of the nitty-gritty here in this video. So if I go back to when I was studying, it was probably like 2014, 2015. And I was, maybe halfway through my degree, and I was clinically depressed. I'd had a few tough years, between the ages of 19, 20, 21. Parents got divorced. Then at the same time that parents got divorced, I got into trouble with the law. I was 19 years old. I was in a nightclub with some friends, and we were taking ecstasy, and I sold an ecstasy pill to an undercover cop. These two girls, they came up to me in the club, and they were grinding on me and dancing with me and flirting with me and giving me their number. They asked me for ecstasy. I said no at first because I only had one, actually. I had taken one, and a friend of mine had one on him, and we were going to split that. And the two girls offered to pay double the price of one. And so stupidly, as a 19-year-old, I have girls flirting with me. I'm a little bit drunk and high off this drug. And stupidly, I gave it to them. I sold it to them. And that's when about 15 seconds later, I had a whole swarm of undercover police surrounding me, and I got arrested and went to court for that. And I was put on a good behavior bond at the time, 2-year good behavior bond, and I had a criminal record. I'm pretty sure it's wiped off now. It's been 10 years. So it was more than a section 10, what we call section 10, where you serve your good behavior bond, and then you're wiped clean, your record's wiped clean. This was beyond that. This was an actual criminal record, but I'm not sure about what happens after the 10-year period. I read that after 10 years, your record kind of gets archived. Like, the police can still see what you've done, But as for other people, like the public, when they ask for police records and stuff, I think it gets wiped off. I'm not 100% sure. But anyway, it doesn't really matter anymore to me. It never really, the criminal record itself never really affected me in terms of finding jobs and stuff. Thank God for that. Because that was huge. That was a huge thing for me at the time, you know. I was never a bad kid, and I always had, you know, ambition to go and make something of myself, to go and work, get a good job, have good employment. And so having that criminal record on my name, especially at the age of 20, that was huge for me. But anyway, I had that. I went through that, and I went through my parents' divorce, and after that it was just, I had a bad breakup, and this all happened within the space of, you know, like 2 years. All of this, the divorce, and then the court case, and then a bad relationship breakup, all happened within 2 years. So I guess you could say I at the time I was clinically depressed for sure. And so it's 2015 by this time, and I'm still suffering from pretty bad depression and anxiety. I've always been an anxious person. Even as a child, I was quite anxious. And so I'm going through like a fair bit of depression at this time while I'm doing my degree. And I remember my mum brought up something about, you know, going overseas and volunteering as a way to kind of give back, and, you know, something like that's good for the soul, you know, especially if you're depressed. If you're depressed, you feel helpless, you feel hopeless, and you feel like there's no point to your existence, you know, like you feel useless in a sense. You have no purpose, you have no motivation or drive. There's no, you know, you don't get any enjoyment out of life. And so she suggested something like that, and I looked it up at the time as a university student. I didn't have much money, and I remember, especially because I loved traveling. I knew I loved traveling. Like I'd just gone to Europe at the time, about 21, 22 years old. And I just loved that. I loved not only the partying and all that kind of stuff, all the hedonistic stuff, but it was more like I felt like traveling, it expanded my mind in a certain way. It's really hard to explain, but it kind of changes your perspective on the world, and it kind of changes you as well. You know, how you view the world and how you view yourself. And so I get back from this Europe trip, and I'm really, really interested in travel. And, you know, I think that interest in travel was always there. As a child, the best gift I could receive was a globe, you know, the world globe. And I could just sit there for a long, long time just looking at the globe and looking at all the countries. I had an atlas when I was like 10 years old, and that was like my favorite book at the time, an atlas. And I'd just read the atlas. I'd draw the world flags and color them in. I had an entire scrapbook. And actually, when I was like 3 years old, what I wanted to be when I grew up was a pilot. I wanted to be an international pilot because I just loved travel, and I loved the airport. The airport, like when I was a kid, the airport just gave me so much excitement. The smell of the fuel and the occasion of going overseas, or someone returning from overseas. You know, it was always such a big occasion. It was a big thing. And so I think, you know, when I was back, you know, after 21, 22, I returned back from Europe, that innate passion and interest that I had about the world and about traveling, you know, was really brought back to life. And so, today. And so when I was depressed, my mum spoke to me. She said, you know, maybe you should go and volunteer. I toyed with the idea, looked up prices, and it was just way too expensive for me at the time. I was a university student, didn't have a full-time income. But I think that idea really planted a seed in me. Time would go on, I'd graduate, and I got my first full-time job. Mind you, at the time, now I don't believe in like those fortune tellers and all that kind of stuff. I don't buy into that. It's pretty much like impossible to be able to tell someone's future as far as we know. And I don't think, even if you could, I don't think, you know, a random person in a little room has the capacity. But anyway, my mum went to a fortune teller around this time, and she returned back and she called me up and she said, I've just gone to a fortune teller and she's told me that you're going to be, you know, you're going to get into a good job and you're going to pursue like a successful career and whatnot, but eventually you're going to give it all away and go and help people in other countries. And at the time I just laughed. I'm like, yeah, right. Because at the time I was more consumed by like money and buying fancy things, and I really wanted to get into this finance so I could make a lot of money and, you know, have a better car than the next person and have a better house and have a better career, be more successful than others around me. I was really consumed by that. And I kind of laughed when she said that. I'm like, oh yeah, right. Like, that will never happen. And so the years have gone on, and I've gotten this job in finance. I'm having fun at first. I'm spending a lot of money on all these suits because we were in the city, and it was a company in the city, and you had to dress up. And at first I'm really loving it, you know, like this new lifestyle. But at the same time, it was extremely, extremely empty. You know, I remember in the first week that I got home from work, from this job, this graduate job, after graduating, and it was like a Tuesday or a Wednesday. It was a Wednesday. And there's an ad on the TV and they're celebrating Hump Day. The people in the ad are singing a song about Hump Day and celebrating that it's Hump Day. Wednesday, they're celebrating Wednesday. And I'm kind of looking at that and I'm like, is this my life from now on? You know, I'm working this 9 to 5 thing. I'm doing this 9 to 5 thing. And I get home on a Wednesday and we celebrate the fact that it's a Wednesday because we've only got 2 more days till the weekend. I'm like, is this what life's all about? Like, is that all there is? And so the months went on, and as the months went on, I started to really hate it. I hated my work. And partly that had to do with there was one particular day where I had to lodge this form, and it involved a lot of money, someone's money, in like an investment account. And I lodged this investment account and whatnot and whatever, and I did it the incorrect way, and I pretty much made a $30,000 mistake, which the company that I was working for had to kind of compensate for. And I remember that day. I remember it so clearly because my anxiety was just through the roof. I remember people running around the office trying to solve this problem, and there were a couple of people who were really angry at me, and I just knew, wow, I've really fucked up here. and I'm only like 3-4 months into this job, and from there it kind of just all went downhill in that job. It just went all downhill. My confidence was completely gone. I was scared to do things because I was too scared to make mistakes after that. And yeah, that's when I really started to just hate going in every day. And that was, a mistake of my own, but it just completely ruined the experience for me. And that's when depression started to like really kick in after that. Depression and anxiety started to really kick in. I started to feel worthless and hopeless and helpless again. And I started to drink every weekend and take drugs occasionally. And all of that was really all of that hedonism and stuff that I engaged in was really a way to just drown out. It was really to drown out all the sadness and all the helplessness and all the hopelessness that I felt and the lack of purpose. Although it was my fault for the error and the experience of it was, ruined as a fault of my own, looking back, I was in the wrong place to begin with. That wasn't a place for me. And thinking about it, eventually I was asked to leave. After 9 months, I was just making so many mistakes and I was asked to leave. The boss took me aside and said, I get you have mental health issues. By this point, I told my boss I have mental health issues. And I didn't want to tell them as a cop-out. I didn't want to tell them that I had mental health issues so that they would go easier on me or anything like that. That wasn't going to happen anyway. This is a company and they were looking after people's money, and it's kind of no excuse. But I ended up telling them because I was going in and out of the psychiatrist's office that year, trialing new medications. I was really depressed. I'd go home depressed every night. I remember I'd have to catch the train every day, and I remember standing by the train every night and the trains coming past me on the tracks, and I'm just thinking, fuck, I wish that would hit me. I wish I could just stand in front of this train and let it take me. So there was at the time suicidal ideation and stuff like that, and I just felt like I hated myself. I had no purpose. I was not passionate about anything in life except for the weekend, where I would drown my sorrows in alcohol and drugs. And thankfully, after like 9 or 10 months at this job, my boss asked me to leave, and I agreed. I said, that's the best thing you could have done for me, thank you. I think I didn't want to make the first move because this was my first job out of university. This is my graduate job, and I felt like such a failure because I had graduated from uni. I worked so hard to get this education, and my first job, I'm making all these mistakes, and I felt like a complete failure. And I didn't really blame it on my mental health issues. It wasn't like I thought to myself, I'm just doing this because I'm depressed. I put my depression down to the fact that I was in the wrong place. And I was doing things that I didn't really want to do. I thought I wanted to do it. I thought I had to do it. I thought, you finish university, you're 25 years old, you've got to go get that 9 to 5 now. Everyone else does it, you have to do it. There's no other way out. And so I was just miserable. I was asked to leave, and when I left, the first thing that popped up into mind, let's go overseas. I had money in my bank account, I had no job, and I wasn't going to start applying for new jobs just yet. And I thought, let's go and do this volunteer thing that you've always wanted to do. I wasn't able to do it when I was a student, but now I have some money in the bank. Let's go and do it. And so I set off to Thailand for a month, and I worked in a rural village there where they domesticate elephants. And then I backpacked Vietnam for a month. And that whole thing was amazing. That whole trip was amazing. I hadn't felt that happy and that free and that alive probably in years by that point. That was something, you know, it was something so special to me and so impactful even to me, that even when I discuss it when I get home to my friends or my mum, I'd start tearing up. I'd get emotional. And that just that was a sign to me, like, you know, if you're getting so emotional, that like this travel thing and this volunteering, it obviously has a profound impact on your life, because you're talking about it and tearing up from the happiness and the joy that it brought. And so that's when I'm like, you know what, I want to go back. I want to do this again, but I want to go on a long term this time. I want to go somewhere, get a job somewhere overseas in another country, and do humanitarian work. I want to do this all out for long term. So the months went by. I returned back from Asia, and I was doing, you know, I was picking up work, part-time, casual kind of work, still trying to figure out, like, I'd already decided by that point, when I was in Thailand, I decided I'm not going back to finance. And I thought there's no point, because I'm just going to hate it again. What's the point of going back? It was difficult to make that decision though, because you go and study a degree for 3 years, 4 years, whatever, you put all that time and effort, and then you have to, and then you decide you don't want to be in that field. Anyways, I'm finding use for the business degree that I did now as I go on, and I learn a bit more about myself and what direction I want to go. But at the time, it was like you majored in financial planning and that's what you wanted to do, and now you're walking away from it, and that was hard. But I made the decision because I knew I'd be miserable either way. And so the months go by and I'm trying to figure out what do I want to do? What is it that I really want to do? That trip in Asia, it taught me a lot about myself and what I want from life, and what I'm interested in, and what I'm good at, and where I really should be in terms of work and in terms of career and all that kind of stuff. And so I'm planning, and then after a few months of being back from that, a job pops up. You know, a corporate, an office job. And it's not in finance, this is in another field. And I thought, you know what, I might go for it. It's offering decent money. And I thought, you know what, let's just give it one more shot. Let's give this thing one more shot. Mind you, I didn't want to, but I thought I had to. Again, it came back to this notion that I had to be there. I had to do the 9 to 5 in the office. There was something telling me that this is your life and you have to do it. You have no choice. Everyone else is doing it, you do it. So I applied for this job, and I remember the day of the interview. I'm in the city, walking around Barangaroo, and I get there early. I get to the place early because I go to a lot of meetings like ridiculously early, just in case. And I'm sitting at a cafe waiting to go in to the building, and I remember reading about the war going on in Syria. This was 2017. And I remember reading about the war going on in Syria and how Donald Trump dropped a ton of bombs on this town in Syria, and it was like breaking news and all that. And I kind of got up and I started walking to the interview, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? You know, I see a guy next to me walking, he's on his phone, he's talking numbers, and I'm thinking about the people in Syria and all the people suffering and all the poverty. And I'm walking in these nice clothes to this nice fancy office, and I'm thinking, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be out there. Like there's shit going on out there. Like important shit. People are dying, people are suffering, and here I am walking into this fancy office that I don't even want to be in these nice clothes. I've got a guy next to me talking numbers on the phone like nothing. He has no clue what's going on, and people are like dying and suffering. And I remember walking into that interview, and I'm like, I thought to myself, I don't want this. I don't want this job. I knew at the time I didn't want the job, but I just went through the motions, and I ended up getting the job. And it was about 4 months in when I was told that I'm being made redundant. But mind you, I was having a lot of issues with that job. I was failing. I was making mistakes, just like my first job in finance. I was making mistakes. The manager kept pulling me up, and it wasn't going very well. And they were actually about to terminate me, but lucky I was saved by the bell with redundancy. But that was another thing that really shook me up, and my confidence was just low after that, because it's like, what's wrong with you? Like, you're not a bad student. You weren't a bad student. You were good. You have ambition. You want to do things in life. Why do you keep going bad in these jobs? And I realize now it's because I never wanted to be there. I thought I had to be there. I thought I wanted to be there even. I never did. And it's like if you put a kid who doesn't want to be in school, if you lock him up in the classroom all day when he doesn't want to be there, he's not going to be a good student. He's not going to do his work. He's going to fail. And that's what it was for me. I locked myself up in this notion that I had to be there and I had to do these things, and I failed as a result. I made mistakes, and I should never have been there in the first place. But anyways, when I was made redundant, that's when I said to myself, no, you know where you want to be. You don't want to be here. You don't want to be in these offices. You know where you want to be. You want to be out there doing humanitarian work, helping people, being overseas, traveling, doing all that stuff. And so that's when I began planning. I began planning this trip. I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know what I was going to do. All I knew was I want to go overseas. I want to go to a third world country where there's a lot of humanitarian work to do. And you know, I want to immerse myself in a culture that's really different to mine, and immerse myself in work that I find meaningful and important and impactful. And I was planning as the months went on. I was researching, doing a lot of research. I had my ideas on where I wanted to go. I wanted to go, you know, India was an idea, Brazil was South America was an idea. And one day I came across this really good opportunity in Cambodia that I use Worldpackers for, the app, the Brazilian travel tech company. And you know, it offered good benefits. It wasn't paying, actually. At first it wasn't paying. It wasn't a paying job. It was just a volunteer job as a digital marketer for a hotel here in Siem Reap. And it wasn't going to pay me, but it was going to provide me, the people were going to provide me with meals every day and a room to stay in. And so I thought, this is good. I'm going to apply for it. Cambodia as well, you know, I'd been to Cambodia just for a night. I spent a night or two here during that Asia trip. And I thought, I know the place, I'm familiar with Asia now, this is a good opportunity, let's go for it. I applied for it, and I got a response back within a few days, and luckily, coincidentally as well, actually, one of the managers, one of the big bosses for this hotel was an Aussie guy, and I thought that this is perfect. Like, the stars have just aligned here. I've got an Aussie guy. He was older. He was in his 50s, and he had kids back home in Australia. And I thought, this is great. And so we had the interviews and stuff, and I eventually ended up coming over. This all happened within a month from when I applied for this job to when I left. It was only about a month or so. But I was prepared. At the time, I was so prepared because I knew this is what I want to do. All I need is that good position now and that good reason to go. And I found it, and by that time I was ready. I had money saved up, money in the bank, and I was ready to go. Mentally, I was ready to go. And so it was only about a month from when I applied for the job to when I came over to Cambodia. And it actually ended up being a paid job. One of the paid jobs that I had here when I was working here, I worked in Siem Reap for a hotel, and I'm so lucky. I'm so grateful when I look back on how all of this happened, because the people who ran the hotel were became family. They're such good people. One of the guys, the owner of this hotel at the time, he owned like a chain of hotels around Siem Reap and a technology company. His name's Stephen. And how he came up was, he was one of the, as a young kid, below 10 years old, he was working, hustling around the jungle, the temple areas in the jungle, hustling every day because he came from a really poor background. And his life, that was his life as a child, was trying to sell people shit around the temples and stuff. And there was one day this American lady, he came across this American lady, and he was probably trying to sell her something, and she must have taken a liking to him because she ended up funding his education, his university education. So he got a degree when as he was older. I don't know how they kept in contact or whatever, but as soon as he got to university age, she funded his degree, and he did a degree in tourism management. And now the guy is running hotels, owning hotels and running hotels. And that was a beautiful story of rags to riches kind of thing, but also a beautiful story of like human nature, and how humans can really, like, we help each other. Where the altruism, that was that theme kept popping up: altruism, human altruism. And altruism was really what brought me here in the first place, because when I was depressed and down and purposeless and looking for things, I'd look for things in books, particularly Buddhism, and the theme of kindness and generosity and altruism kept coming up. And there was a quote by Gandhi, and this quote was one of the things that brought me here. I really believe that, not consciously but subconsciously, was that something along the lines of the best way to find yourself is to get lost in helping others. And as someone who was like really struggling with myself and who I was, and my place in the world, that quote by Gandhi really, really heavily resonated. I think it's Gandhi, maybe Osho, I'm not sure, but that quote really, really resonated with me. And I really believe that was one of the quotes that brought me here. It was this theme of kindness and generosity. I wanted to get lost in helping others as a means of finding myself, finding purpose in my life, finding more happiness and joy. And I hypothesized that the best way to do that was to come to a place where there was help needed, where I could be of use, where I could be useful and use my skills. You know, I spent years getting a degree in business, and I thought, let's put that to use some way, in some way, and come and help people. Put your knowledge and your skills to work in a place where you can really make an impact on people's lives and make people's lives better. And so I did that. And it was really after reading those books on Buddhism and the Dalai Lama, and how he sat with an American psychiatrist, and they went through how generosity is good for the brain, like the neural activity in the brain changes in a positive way when you're behaving in ways, in altruistic ways. And since then, you know, I've done research on that as well. In my degree that I'm studying now in psychology, I wrote a report only a couple of months ago now on the neural activity of the neural modulatory activity of people with pain, and how and how altruism can modulate that neural activity and decrease pain in people with like chronic pain, neuropathic pain, and even enhance well-being, because people who suffer from neuropathic pain usually is comorbid with depression. So I looked at how altruism could be a modulator for the neural activity and could decrease physical pain and also enhance well-being. So it's kind of like you kill two birds with one stone, the altruism. And I thought, you know, at the time, someone who was, I'd say I was clinically depressed, I hypothesized that coming and living a life of service in a place like Cambodia, being altruistic with my work and with my time and energy, that would have some effect on me. And to confirm, I'd say my hypothesis was correct. Because ever since coming here and being here, I've felt more of a sense of purpose, 100%. Because I know now my life, my work and my efforts are going to go towards serving people in whatever way. I happen to like education. I worked in schools here, and I fundraised money for an NGO, educational NGO here. And we renovated their campus. It was a school that offered education for free to underprivileged kids. And the conditions were extremely poor because it had no funding. It was just an NGO, and they offered free education, so there was no funding, and it was really, really poor conditions. And I stayed on campus for about a month with them in some of the worst conditions I've ever seen. I was on a yoga mat on the floor, concrete floor. There were rats, there were frogs that would come inside the little, sleeping in a little tin shed kind of thing, with like bricks put together by the students. It was really poor conditions, the poorest you'll get. And I stayed there and helped fundraise for the school, and we got mattresses, and we were able to get mattresses for all the students, and that started to attract more of the students to the campus. And I might head there in the next couple of days. I've got about 5 more days in Cambodia, so until I head back home to Australia. So I might go there and shoot a bit of that and see how they're going with progress there. But yeah, being here, moving here and doing that whole thing, it was a huge thing from where I came from. You know, a guy who was living this life that he thought he had to do. I was so unhappy and so dissatisfied with my life, and I lacked purpose and I lacked ambition and joy. I had no joy from life. I could take no joy from life. And to come from that and to come and live in a country like Cambodia and do the things that I did, it really taught me a lot about myself and about the nature of altruism and being of service to others. And I think when you're of service to others, that's when you do some of your best work. That's when your brain really comes alive, your mind comes alive. And that's how I felt when I was here. You know, looking back on all those office jobs I had, I felt brain dead in those offices, and the results show. You know, I was making mistakes left, right and center. As soon as I came here, and this was the work, I'd never been paid so low for the work that I was doing here. This was the lowest income I'd ever received, and some of it was even for free. But the work made me feel alive and made me feel passionate and enthusiastic. And I was like, whoa, where did this come from? You know, looking back 2 years ago, you were in that cubicle and you were making all the $30,000 mistake, and you were kicking yourself and wondering, you know, you got no passion, you got no joy, you don't care about anything, you don't care about work, you got no ambition. And then to come here and pretty much work for free and have that zest, that passion, that ambition. I just wanted to work and help, and I was so passionate. I became so passionate about my work and the stuff I was doing, and I was really putting in a lot of effort and a lot of care. And that's when I learned that belief I had about myself was wrong. I'm not incompetent, or, you know, it's not that I don't care, it's that I was just in the wrong place. And I guess the lesson here is to find your place. To find your place. If you're depressed and you're unenthusiastic and feeling unambitious, maybe you're in the wrong place. Maybe you're doing the wrong things. Maybe you're in the wrong relationship. Maybe you're in the wrong workplace. Maybe you're in the wrong field. Maybe you're living the wrong lifestyle. There's so many factors to consider. When something's going wrong, maybe you just need to change things up a bit. And you don't need to change things up to the extent of moving to Cambodia and, you know, doing that thing, something like that. But, you know, it could be something smaller, and you'll be surprised when you change things up a bit to suit what you want and what you're meant for. You'll be surprised how much you change, how much the world around you changes. And coming to Cambodia and for me personally, being of service and being altruistic with my time and my energy, that made me feel most alive. And then that was the catalyst for my interest now in human behavior and psychology. I want to help people, and one day I want to coach people and give therapy, be a therapist, be a coach, be a mentor, and be an educator as well. And Cambodia really taught me about my passion for things like human behavior and education. Education I'm so passionate about, because I've seen the impact it can make here. But anyways, thanks for that.